It looks like a full moon tonight. When did the concept of Deltarune start? In 2011, when I was away from home while I was in college, I suddenly got sick. I couldn't get any medicine, and I had a very clear dream when I was sleeping with high fever. That was the dream of the ending of the game, and since then, I was obsessed with the idea that I had to make that ending game. Did I scare you? I would like to tell you a story. The story of Undertale. No! And I'm not going to talk about why Undertale is a meta masterpiece that forces you to sit at the lunch table with two skeletons and one that's melting, because even the act of leaving the game alone is engaging with this pollinated freak. No. Undertale's story has been beaten and robbed by people who are much smarter and more capable than I, but what I would like to inform you is of how Undertale and Deltarune came to be, where this little white mutt got the inspiration and ideas for the beautiful games he would go on to make. So, plummet 304.8 meters down a hole because you can't bother to bring an umbrella and you decide that the gaping hole of death filled with homicidal demons is a better choice than getting a bit wet. Because here we go. Okay, now pull that jaundice-ridden kid back up because we're not starting with Undertale. Yeah, so I kinda lied. No, come on, please bear with me. Undertale was not Toby's first game project. That would be a game we will dub Deltarune, except not Deltarune just yet, but wait like 6 years then come back. In early 2012, Tumblr user Canotines would post a set of card illustrations featuring some now familiar characters. That's right, these bicycle wheel freaks are as old as dust. Toby saw her designs and decided he wanted to make an RPG with these characters, but these characters wouldn't end up being used until 2018 for Deltarune. For the time being, this game went nowhere, but it left Toby with the idea of wanting to make an RPG. So, Mr. Fox started drawing out concepts for a world and its denizens. Toby looked towards his favorite games for inspiration. The two most influential games for Undertale are undoubtedly Earthbound, who would have guessed, and Brandish. Earthbound's grip over Undertale is more obvious than the fact that Asgore is the best Undertale character. Fight me. So, I'm only going to talk about the more interesting aspects of Earthbound's inspiration. You might have noticed that Mount Afoot is just Toby's name spelled backwards and like he's drunk, but most don't know that this was highly inspired by Earthbound Beginning's Mount Atoy, the mountain at the end of the game named after Shigesato Atoy, Mother's creator, who Toby even got to meet in person in 2016. The opening theme to Undertale is also highly inspired by the opening theme to Earthbound Beginnings. Take a listen. Toby Fox has a long history with Brandish, his Earthbound Halloween hack even starring the protagonist of Brandish, Varric, who went on to become a huge inspiration in Kris's design. In Brandish, you fall underground into the ruins, and in Undertale, you fall underground into the ruins. I'm watching you, Mr. Fox. The Undertale shop UI is also identical to the one in Brandish. Also, hey, wait a minute, bring that title screen back. Toby, you sly dog. Right before we move on, it's important to mention Shin Megami Tensei as a crucial force in Undertale's conception. In an interview with Nintendo, Toby states that while he did not play much of Shin Megami Tensei, he loved how the game allowed you to converse with the monsters. He loved this idea so much that he knew he wanted to make a game where that was the main focus, that game obviously becoming Undertale. Now that those three are out of the way, we can finally talk about Undertale's characters. And who better to start with than your best friend? Now, there's not much known in means of inspiration for Flowey, other than in the Undertale art book, where Toby states Flowey was partially inspired by Face from Cosby Daft's NES Godzilla creepypasta. face being just that, a gray face that changes depending on its emotion, asking the player nonsensical questions and playing cruel jokes, just like Flowey does on multiple occasions in Undertale. For Toriel, Asgore, and Asriel, the race of boss monsters was likely inspired by the Mimiga from Cave Story, and the Mimiga were inspired from outside. Cave Story is a game Toby has stated to be quite fond of. Wait a second. What's another way of saying Cave Story? Never mind, that's it. Fun fact, Napstablook was never even supposed to be in the game. They were simply made as a placeholder monster in Toby's Battle UI mockups, but Toby's friends liked them so much, Toby had to include them in the game. Napstablook's battle theme, Ghost Fight, was actually inspired by Pepper Steak from Off. Listening to both, I think you can hear the similarities. Toriel specifically was inspired by tutorial characters who just won't leave you the fuck alone. In an interview, Toby said, "I played Skyward Sword and despised how often Fi would give me the answer to a puzzle. I figured if someone was that concerned about you, then they wouldn't just tell you the answers. They would do the puzzles and fight all the monsters for you. This is the reason why Toriel literally holds your hand through a section of ruins." The other big inspiration for Toriel is the trope of RPG mothers whose only reason to exist is to say goodbye to their kid, as they're totally chill with the idea of their 10-year-old running loose in the wild fighting rabies-ridden dogs, God, and this guy. Moving into Snowdin, Sans and Papyrus have more interesting origins. The Skeleton Brothers were initially inspired by a webcomic about a skeleton named after the font Helvetica. Papyrus's design was originally inspired by Dodon from Off, and was gonna be a creepy dude with a fedora who had no redeeming qualities and watched a show called My Little Boney. So basically concept Papyrus was a Redditor. But Toby changed Papyrus because he didn't feel it was right to have such a mean-spirited character, especially in a game like Undertale. Papyrus's battle theme Bone Trousel was not even made for Undertale. It was actually made as the main battle theme for Deltarune, except not Deltarune just yet, but wait like 6 years then come back. And I don't know about you guys, but I think Papyrus is a much better name than Times New Roman. Papyrus's brother
Human, I remember your genocides.
on the other hand, never really changed much. But in early sketches Toby made while in college, we can see that Sans might have actually changed his mouth expression when confronting the player for killing Papyrus, as opposed to Sans' constant grin he does in the actual game. Sans was also originally going to run poker at a casino in Snowdin, which ended up actually being added into the Xbox version of Undertale. Sans' really small slot machine caused Xbox Undertale to be rated teen. That's right, baby. Oh, and before I forget, on the right side of these early Papyrus concepts, we can see that Papyrus has a brother named Sans and a named Alphys, everyone's favorite media literacy challenge, doesn't have much in means of inspiration, other than the fact that her glasses were inspired by John Egbert from Homestuck.
Alphys square glasses are inspired by John Egbert. No one needed to know that.
But now they do. Who's John Egbert?
Homestuck is a webcomic about giving yourself skin poisoning from sleeping in a bathtub of vodka and Sharpie ink in an effort to dye yourself gray. Mettaton is a real interesting case, his box form being inspired from a Wallace and Gromit short of all places. Side by side, I think it's pretty obvious. Mettaton's theme music, however, started out as a fan-made theme by Toby for the character Noise Master from GGDG's, hope I pronounced that right, webcomic Cucumber Quest. Side note, this song's been haunting me like a demon ever since editing this, it's so good. Gigi was so impressed with Toby's work that it started a lifelong friendship, Gigi even working on Deltarune as an artist, making concept art for upcoming chapters. Mettaton's EX form seems to have started with a possible reference to Shadow Dio from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which wouldn't be the only JoJo reference in Undertale. By far the biggest inspiration for Mettaton as a whole is Bob Sparker from the web series Tales from Electropolis. In Tales from Electropolis, Bob Sparker runs a television show called Shock Till You Drop, in where contestants are strapped to an electric chair and shocked with increasing levels of electricity in exchange for cash. It's pretty obvious that Mettaton's sadistic game show host personality is inspired from Bob Sparker, and hell, I mean, Toby said it himself. As for Asgore, he doesn't have a direct, clear inspiration. Personality-wise, initially Asgore was going to be a much more intimidating and quiet character, but Toby's friend Reed Young's personality inspired Toby to make Asgore more like Reed, which is a great choice because this guy's the GOAT. If you want to learn more about who Reed is, I highly recommend you watch the film Earthbound USA. It's one of the most heartwarming films I've ever seen, and hey, Toby's in it. Just look at him go. See, this guy was most likely made as a reference to Oboa from Yume Nikki, who looks very similar when putting both side to side. Toby is known to be a big fan of Yume Nikki, even being the only person to interview the game's infamously reclusive creator Kikiyama. You know, you'd think with such a rare opportunity to interview Kikiyama, Toby would ask real thought-provoking questions that would make fellow Yume Nikki fans cry with tears of inspiration. He asked what they would get at Denny's. Now that Undertale's taken care of, we can finally move on to the game from Toby Fox's fever dream. Now, we already discussed the origin of King and Lancer, but I have one more thing to add about Kris before we move on with the rest of the fun gang. In one of the first pieces of concept art made for Deltarune, we can see that Kris has dialogue portraits, despite the fact that Kris has no dialogue of their own in Deltarune. Or at least not yet. These were probably meant to be used in the ending of Chapter 1, as the second portrait is Kris doing his now iconic eye flash. This begs the question though, what was Kris going to say? You is a motherfucker, you know that! Everyone's favorite flying purple people eater, Susie, was originally going to be way different. Susie was originally inspired by Maya Fey from Phoenix Wright, and by extension would serve as a friendly, cute, and sassy companion to Kris. So basically Susie was going to be purple Ralsei with a ponytail. Obviously this never stuck, as the more Toby wrote Deltarune, Susie changed into the tough girl we know and love. Ralsei's inspiration goes way back, even before Toby's fever dream that birthed Deltarune in 2011. In one of Toby's monthly columns, he tells his stories of making RPG Maker games with his brothers as children. One of the games made by Toby's oldest brother was called New Genesis, which to the rest of them seemed almost professional. In New Genesis, Toby appeared in the game as a mage with a green coat, who would fight alongside the main character who was named Ralse. Toby obviously later taking this name Ralse and adding an I to the end of it to create Ralsei. The I was also most likely added to make Ralse an anagram of Azrael, so the anagram would make sense in the context of Deltarune. Also, I don't think I need to spell it out that Toby took the idea of a green coat wearing mage for Deltarune. Oh my god, wait. Ralsei isn't connected to Gaster. Ralsei isn't evil either. Ralsei is Toby. Okay, you've all behaved yourself. You know what that means. Big shot time. See, most people know that Flowey's voice lines come from old commercials, but there's possibly one other case of Toby taking inspiration from old advertisements.
That's it. It's time for a big shot.
Oh yeah, y'all, we do need a big shot. We need a big shot.
You need a big shot? I got your big shot right here.
This soda commercial from 1997 features a guy named Mike talking about how they need a big shot. Howdy, this is N-Card Christmas Tree Farmer, and I hope you liked this. It was really fun to make, and I plan on making more Undertale and Deltarune videos. I would really appreciate any feedback in the comments. Found my voice annoying? Tell me in the comments. Hate my editing style? Tell me in the comments. Something else you think inspired Toby? Let me know in the comments. Some of you probably already know that Toho inspired the bullet hell aspect of Undertale, and I just left that out because one, most people already know that, and two, it was like one sentence, so, you know. If you're wondering why I never talked about Undyne and Frisk, as for Undyne, there was barely anything for her in terms of inspiration as far as I could tell, so I just left her out. For Frisk, they used to have black hair. Also, there's this early screenshot of their name being Ness, so that's kinda cool, I guess. Oh, I also forgot! Sans is inspired by Ness!